Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I want to talk a little bit about to talk today a little bit about the kind of awareness and struggle that, and also resolution that I have arrived at of late, as it relates to where my attention and focus goes as it relates to what is happening around me. We know that the world is changing rapidly, and there are so many events, not only climate change events, but also, we had the recent earthquake in New York. That was a little bit, I don't remember ever feeling an earthquake in New York, or if there was, it was very minor. And all of the places around the world where things are changing so rapidly that we are all being bombarded by such rapid transformation and change that a lot of us are having struggle, or at least I am. I'm struggling, and I'm going to talk as I usually do. I'm going to make this very personal to me. And I had a couple of people of recent time, because of the way I teach, instead of teaching from a podium and pretending or trying to act as if I have mastered all of these things, rather than talk to you like I'm a work in progress, like I am, and with sincerity and honesty, and sharing with you where I stand and giving you the intimate details on how I overcame an obstacle as a means to facilitate your own reconciliation. So I hope this comes across the right way, because I had a couple of people in the past month who have said to me, well, you were struggling with this, blah, 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 as if they were trying to blame me from not being perfect or not being a master of some kind. And I have to say to you, the era that we're going to go, the new earth is going through, is authenticity, truth, authenticity, and transparency. This idea of teaching from the top by reading from the book, or trying to teach as a teacher from the podium, is over. Your vulnerability and the sharing of that vulnerability is the new way to teach. By being honest with past struggles, with current struggles, and how you overcame, you become relatable to other people who are struggling, are currently struggling, and you are giving them a bridge to help them achieve what they need to achieve. Because once you come up as being on a pedestal, as presenting yourself as being perfect and in perfect alignment, and you need to do this, and yelling at people and telling them you should do this, why don't you, and you come off as somebody that doesn't have anything to say, and really, particularly now where there's some critical things that we all need to do, as the rapid changes are going around us, and all of us are trying to find a way to move with agility emotionally to major internal shifts that are taking place in us. So I am saying all of this entry to say that judge me if you can, but in judging me, you are exposing your own negativity, you're exposing yourself. Because through your judgment, you're showing the lack of compassion and understanding that you also have. And take it for whatever it is that you want to take it. So I have noticed, and I'm going to share with you a very specific incident, and I will extrapolate it into other areas of life. So in my consciousness very recently, what became important was the oral argument that were being presented in front of the Supreme Court. I didn't go through all the details in the news, but enough highlights to figure out that oral argument that was being presented at the Supreme Court for the claim of absolute immunity. And because our Constitution, in the Constitution of the United States, there is no such thing as a king or supreme leader. That goes, to my mind or to my consciousness, against everything that the Constitution is written about. And however, when I heard some of the questions that some of the justices were asking, I got deeply concerned. And of course, the pundits and all of the channels are saying they're going to give the ex-president what he wants, blah, 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 and all that. And so, and I got concerned. And I thought to myself, well, if they give him what he wants, that's the end of the American experiment, because it goes against the foundation of the Constitution. And I don't want to get political. That's not the point. I'm going to explain to you what the point in a minute. It's just, this was just the way the lesson came to me. And so the next day, after processing all of that stuff and the concern and what could happen to the country if that were to happen, the next day I was in meditation, and I felt very clearly that God was asking me to pray for the justices. And it happened all at once, because it's very hard to explain how a download like this happened. It feels like one wave, but to unpack it, it has a lot of inner pieces or outer pieces that needs to be expanded. What I felt initially is that you should pray for them so that they can do the right thing. And I have been praying for them for the past 2 days now, because in their core, there is goodness. And by all of you in America and even outside of America, expecting them to do the worst, you're gonna actually anchor, because collectively I'm explaining this, but it wasn't necessarily a one sentence. I did hear a couple of sentences, but I'm explaining it in a way because it was an instant knowing. So by all of you focusing on the negative and seeing them in negative light, you're projecting onto them, because it's the double slit experiment where the observer is determining what actually appears in front of them. So as observers, if all of us, okay, 350 million people in this country focus on this and expect them to turn and say X, Y, Z, that's what's going to happen. Because as observers collectively together, we're going to anchor and ground a wave function collapse to cause that to become real. Equally important, if we expect and intend and observe and want to create the opposite will happen. And this liberated my heart. I felt a great sense, a release, a great ease. I felt it brought hope back into me. It brought certainty, it brought hope back into me, a hope that I didn't have before. And I have to say that if you extrapolate this into other parts of our lives, and I can extrapolate another part of my life, there are so many things, particularly as shift is happening all around us, and things are moving very quickly. And many of the changes that are taking place, all changes initially when they appear to us as a suspicious thing and something that's negative that we should be really from. We should be very concerned about. And therefore, and if you're projecting negativity onto that change, you're gonna, through the egregore or group body that you're gonna create with everyone on earth, you're gonna cause this to now precipitate to a lens that will cause it to be toxified. So what I'm learning in the past few days is that I have to stop doing this. And I have to start now looking for the positivity. I have to be like Pollyanna. I have to see the positive and the good in everything, and I have to allow that good to become the focus. Because a lot of time, that story, people don't understand that story. Pollyanna was not delusional. She was visionary. And so the idea of opening myself up to a vision of the future, and this is the only way we're going to enter a new earth, because otherwise we will not find safe passage. If I'm focusing, if everything is suspicious and negative, and I'm afraid, this is going to happen. We're going to make it happen. But on the other hand, as being the observer, since the observer is creating reality, double slit experiment is an experiment in which scientists are bombarding electron through two tiny slits, and with a medium behind them to record how the slits were depositing on the medium on the sensitive filament. And when they expected the electron to look like particle, because that's what they were, they look like particle. And one day they left the instrument on, and sure enough, when they returned, it looked like waves. So which is it? Is it a wave or a particle? Anyway, they repeated the experiment ad nauseam. What happened is that every time the scientists were observing, wanted to see they saw wave patterns. When they wanted to see particle, they saw particle. So the conclusion of the experiment, after multiple repeats of this through the scientific method, is that the observer is controlling the reality, the outcome. It's controlling the reality. This is a scientific experiment that was done. And it's still being done and still repeating with the same results. So what I'm saying there is that if you expect anything from your friends and your family, we all have friends and family members whose behavior, actions create maybe troubling ripple in our lives that are causing all kinds of chaos. And we have suspicious, if not judgmental, projections toward them. Okay? We are judging them. And as we judge them, if you have a large family and everyone expects somebody to be the scapegoat or the black sheep, they are going to be the black sheep. They are going to be the scapegoat because you're projecting it into them. And you're creating an archetypical role for them that they don't have a choice to step in. I remember, I don't remember, it's the book called The Dark Material. And I remember one character in there said something to the effect, and it was about Adam and Eve. These two characters were like Adam and Eve archetypes. And then she was supposed to bring them together to sin. And then at one point, the line, I remember that line stood out to me, popped out, and I remember it still today. and she said, she was leaving to make sure that the meeting happened. And she said, I gotta go because I have a snake that I need to play, meaning the snake in the Garden of Eden. And I have to become the snake, basically, what she was saying. And so we are projecting archetype and expectation all the time. In other words, we are much more powerful than we think we are. And if you have certain kind of expectation, particularly when so many of us are expecting certain political and social outcomes. And by the way, I'm praying not only for the justices, I'm praying for all world leaders to find peace, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's Hamas and Israel, whether it is Putin and Ukraine. I'm praying for all world leaders because now I'm realizing how I can extrapolate this. If I can, and more intimate to me, what is it in my life that I desire that's not happening? And how do I change my observer influence to create the outcome that I want, rather than focusing on the doubt and the negativity? Let me focus, like Pollyanna, on the positive, on the benevolent, on the kind, on the loving, and allow that to become the outcome that I attract and desire. And when you couple that with certainty, it doesn't have a choice but to be created. Any questions, any comments you may have?
Thank you. That sounds like exactly my thought, rather than focus on the negative expressions of factions around the world and at home, that it does much more good to focus on the best outcome possible. But that does require a significant percentage. Would you say other people in agreement with that? You're battling probably a lot of the people reacting rather than projecting.
You're right, Janice, but except what Spirit told me is this: you're much more powerful than you think.
Mm.
I could feel it.
Mm. Mm.
You're much more powerful than you think, and we are not the only one. I know for a fact, for example, Emma Karuna Maya, she's having all of her students praying for world peace. So there are lots of it, and this is one teacher amongst many other teachers around the world that are doing similar things, having people focusing on world peace and trying to bring ascendance and healing to the planet. So there's a lot of us that are doing this. We just need, and maybe you and I are nothing more than the drop that will allow the cup to overflow.
Mm. I like that.
You see what I'm saying? I feel so much better, Janice, and all of you, because the past 2 days, whereas before I was feeling like, oh my God, another negative thing, oh my God, when is this going to end? And but it was not directly in my core, but it was all around me, because that's what the pundits in the news and everybody else is saying. All the media channel, this is what they are regurgitating and saying. And the moment Spirit said no, and it was that wave that came to pray for them. Pray for them. Because through the observer effect, you're going to influence that that God will be able to reach them and they will do the right thing.
Mm. Mm. Well, there's a lot packed.
What? Oh, go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Esther.
No, go ahead on Janice, and then I'll go.
No, I just was making that comment. That's finished.
You don't, oh, okay. Well, what I was going to say is that, well, there were several things that were resonating here for me, and I guess, well, it was more than it was a lot. But what I'm going to say is that it reminds me of the movie, I don't know that I have this right. It's like Everything All at Once.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. And so what I mean what the other thing that I was getting is that everything is present in the moment. I mean everything, all of the possibilities, it's everything. It's not realized maybe, but it's present in terms of this energetic possibility. And then we are given choice, discernment in how to focus. And that is the power by which we create anyway, or things are created here on earth. And then the other thing that came to me was the story that you told about Kuan Yin in terms of her, and I might have this, help me out here if I get this, don't quite have it. It was like her, it was either her love or her suffering or something like that was a way of healing the world.
Correct.
Through her own just her going to her core touched the world's core.
Yep. Yep.
And through that, she's healing the world.
That's correct. She went internally and focused. She was so broken and so abused by her father that she went in isolation and focused on trying to find the core reasons. And she didn't ignore or pushed away and try to imagine that she was in a better place. She just went in. And she went so deeply in that core and focused on addressing the pain and facing it, that she, through that process, she began to realize that her father, no one that's normal and healthy would do this to someone else. She began to understand where her father was coming from and why this happened to her. And she began to forgive herself for having been subjected to this, forgive her dad, and she began to do, and basically what she did is that she was listening to herself. And in the process of that listening, she began to heal the whole world. Not intentionally.
I guess that's what resonated to me when you were talking too. It's our ability to just relate so vividly and continuously to that presence of the divinity within us that resonates outward, and it's everywhere, but anyway, that's kind of what came up for me.
I want to thank you for this, because one of the other things, there's so many things that came up while I was going through this for the past 3 days. These people, these politicians, they are not necessarily evil. They may be misguided at the moment, but they are not necessarily evil. There is a core of goodness in them. There is a God and light in them. And it's a question of all of us externally understanding that that light exists and seeking it out, and with intention, with love and with support, and asking God to, we're not going to do it ourselves, but asking God energetically to reach them and awaken that flame in them so that the right thing can be done. I found this to be really amazing, because this was the furthest thing from my mind, I have to tell you. You know, it was, again, I had felt good that day, that morning, and I was very neutral after my meditation. And then this literally came out of nowhere. It was just a wave that just hit me. You should pray for them. And to that, I extrapolated it to everything else. It's like, yeah, if it's good for this, it should be good for everything else in my life that I'm trying to achieve. There are so many projects and so many things that are struggling, that have all kinds of resistance, that are, you know, what if I apply the same system? Instead of seeing the players as being obstacles and resistance, what if I see them as being co-creators and participating, or being loving, or being kind, or being supportive? What if I see the whole world moving toward that greater end where we exist in a harmonious environment? Because there's enough resources, there's enough for all of us. And and this is all, it's not that I didn't know this intellectually, okay? You have to understand this. And when I say this, I don't, this is where people begin to think that I'm learning this for the first time. I understand this from an intellectual standpoint, but I'm telling you this now, through that past 3 days, I am getting this viscerally in my core. It's a different thing. The fact that other people around the planet are praying for world leaders and they're reading prayers and rosaries or mantras, it's not the same thing as me knowing this viscerally in my entire being. Now I know it. It's not something that someone else is telling me to do and I think it's the appropriate thing to do. But now I know it in my body. That as the observer, I have much more influence than I think I do, as I was told as this was unpacking for me.
Pierre, I just have a question about getting, you don't have to get permission for this, right?
No, because what I'm doing is that it's all about love.
Okay.
You can release love toward anyone. We're projecting the negative influence all the time anyway. In other words, you know what I'm saying? You know, we're all projecting judgment and negative influence on people all the time about every situation. What we're doing is switching the gear. We're switching the gear and we're saying, I'm doing the opposite. I'm projecting a positive outcome. And again, from an abstract standpoint, I don't want these people, I want them to make a decision, for example, at the Supreme Court, according to their highest understanding. I'm not telling them exactly what to do. As it happens in my life with projects that I'm doing, let all of these things happen. Again, it's the same when you go into when you connect into source and into blessed field, you bring in an abstract thought that is for the greatest good. Peace on earth. Peace on earth is not manipulative. It's not me trying to overcome somebody's will.
Okay, thank you. And whatever decision is made, I mean, the way that I'm understanding this is that it's for good. I mean, regardless of what you think about it at the moment, it is for good, and it's bringing about that which is the best for all of us.
Yes. And the other understanding that unpacked for me as well related to this, because, you know, these things have, they have, it's a root system. They're tributary ideas and thoughts that are connected. What came through, connected to what you just said, fear not, Pierre, because God has a plan, and you are deeply included in the plan. Feel the vibration connected to this.
Sorry, Pierre, what was that? You are the plan and feel the what of the plan?
And you are deeply connected to this plan. And I said, feel the vibration of these words.
Oh, okay, feel the vibration. Okay. Wow.
It's extraordinary.
Mhm.
Instead of
Okay.
seeing, because so many things have happened in the past 3 years, 2.5 years, 4 years for me, that was terrifying. And I've gone to so many things that were, what would have happened if I was focusing on the opposite?
Mhm.
The possibilities, the ease it would have created for me. So I know about the surrender and the letting go, but I'm talking about something else, which is
Right.
in my perception of the world and how I see challenges as they're being presented, particularly as external events are being projected onto us. Instead of reacting from fear, calm down, take a deep breath, and try to see, like Pollyanna, the good that this is bringing for you. And attract that good. Because whatever the change and the transformation is that you don't understand, God has a plan. It's still part of God's plan. And remember, you're included in that plan.
Mhm.
You're going to find safe passage.
This thought just came to me that we think about a legacy that somebody leaves in their life, some great deeds that were done, but maybe the most significant legacy that we can leave is the unseen, silent legacy of exactly what you're speaking about.
It is so powerful what you're saying, Janice. I don't even, okay. It's extraordinary because, and I'm going to go to comic books to explain this. First, to my teacher, Dr. Stone, when he was invoking the ascended being, the first thing he would call, is a collective of being he calls the silent watchers of the cosmos. They are the observers. Now, I'm jumping now. I'm going to go to Marvel comic. And in Marvel comic, there is a collective of being that they call the Watchers. And what they do is that they observe. They do not participate, but they observe everything. They watch all dimension of time and space, and they observe everything. They're godlike being. They're extremely powerful, tall with big bald head and etc. But there was one struggle that was happening on Earth with a celestial being that had negative intent toward the Earth, and the Earth heroes got up and tried to fight it. And the Watchers came. Usually they observe from another dimension. He came to observe Galactus while Galactus was doing whatever it is that other being was coming in to do whatever he was doing. And it was, as the story evolved, comes to find out the Watcher, by coming in and observing, was actually influencing.
Mhm.
Although he does not influence, but he was influencing. And he ended up influencing for the positive.
Hmm.
You're totally right. The silent watchers that are watching, or the Galactic Regent Council, the Galactic Masters, the core being, when they observe and when they said, sometimes I channel and I hear them say, I have my eyes fixed on you. When they're observing and they're watching us, it means that they are projecting onto us through the double slit observer thing, the outcome that they're expecting to happen to us. And by that, they are influencing. They don't actually, what's the word? They don't participate, but they can influence.
Hmm.
So it's a profound gift and effect, if you think about it. I remember that comic so well. Of course, I lost it. I should have kept these comics because, if you're a collector, these things are worth a lot of money. When I was a kid, I used to buy these things all the time, read them all the time. And I remember that whole scene toward the end where the Earth heroes, when that other celestial being lost, they said to him, but by you being here, Galactus can read mine, but by you being here, you also can read mine. By you then reading on mine, you blocked him out. He couldn't figure out what we were doing. So you knew what you were doing. You were supporting us. And that was exactly what he was doing. So when higher celestial being, or for that matter, us, as higher celestial being in infancy, when we observe and when we notice certain things, and when we project certain outcome to the projection, when we begin to send love and support, when we begin to see and exist in a state of hope, and we know that we are part of God's plan, and God told me so clearly, you're part of my plan. You're not outside of it. Fear not. And because of this, I have to surrender into that knowing that I don't have to worry about how am I going to do this? Is the earth going to be okay? Is earthquake going to come and rattle New York? And am I going to, because, there's this suppressed narrative. Is it going to be volcanic ash? Is it going to be a nuclear bomb? All kind of crazy, weird thought that are running in conspiracy and theory circle that are somehow existing in the deep recess of my consciousness or the perimeter, like a dark cloud. Why don't I focus on actually creating a different narrative, a different story, and saying we're all getting along and we all love each other and we're being kind to each other, and we're actually giving, and not only being kind, but we're giving others the right of free choice, the right to make their own decision. We are giving people the right to worship what they want to worship. We are giving people the freedom instead of trying to dominate and control and edit everything that everyone is doing. After all, what we're trying to achieve is liberation. Any other questions or comments?
Well, I just had this thought, and it really might be off the beaten path, but it's kind of like, I agree with everything that was said, Janice, you, Pierre, Bobby. I had this thought, though, about the collective that I see going on here in this country. And I'm talking about not when I say collective, that means the people in decision-making, areas in terms of directing, what's happening in terms of the key institutions and things like that, that are really guiding the country in ways that can be really disturbing. I also see it. It reminded me of the story by Dr. Seuss, where he talked about, it was the story of Yertle the turtle that was the king and wanted to stay king, and wanted to build the kingdom higher and higher. And the way that he was doing this is that if he could look out and see, and how far he could see, and the way that the kingdom was being built is that the turtles would have to, stack up on each other's back, kind of like a pyramid, kind of. So, and at every level, he wanted to say, I want my kingdom bigger. I want it higher. I want to, because he wanted to be the ruler of everything. And the people at the bottom, or the turtles at the bottom, beginning to say, well, we can't take this no more. It's getting too heavy. And, he had a blind eye to that. He couldn't hear it because that wasn't what he wanted. So he kept ordering, I want my kingdom to be higher and higher. And so turtles, they would be climbing on top of each other's back and straining and all of that. And then one turtle burped and the whole thing fell down. And that's how I feel about the direction of this country right now. It's going to cave in on itself because it just wants to be so big and so powerful, where it can't hear any other voices about, what are the needs of anything except blindly what I want. And I had another thought here, and I don't know whether it's appropriate for me to share it, so I'll share it after class.
Okay, no problem. So the thing for me is that I'm trying to inhabit that space of hope, that space of trust in God's purpose, and that space of healing. And a lot of that trust, a lot of that healing for me, and by the way, connected to Resac, as we're moving toward Resac in about less than in May 26th. The understanding of Resac, the panel for Resac, is not the angels, not the Elohims, but it's the divine feminine. And I'm talking about Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, and Lady Gaia or Shakti. And I'm going to also channel Lord Melchizedek as the masculine to balance it out. And that's the panel. And part of it is because the divine feminine, or the womb of the world, is deeply connected to creating this edifice of compassion, protection, and mercy. And it's through that we can find safe passage as we are transiting to some rather triggering and turbulent landscape emotionally for all of us. So it's a question of me and all of us connecting to the root of that divine feminine energy as it creates and try to anchor in us the mercy that's needed. In the Kabbalah, the root of the divine feminine, you have Kether at the top, you have Hakma as number 2, the second Sephiroth, and then number 3 is Bina. Bina is the as two titles opposite to each other: the infantile mother and the fertile mother. It's Alma and Aina. It's and one is about you merge as you are ascending the tree from Malkuth, and you go back and you are ascending the tree going back into Bina. As you're going back, you are you have to surrender your personality, and you have to let go of who you are so that you can become part of the collective awareness. So she becomes then the infertile mother. And when you're descending, she becomes the fertile mother that allows you to precipitate out. And that feminine top of the left column of the Kabbalistic tree is the energy of the divine feminine that is needed for us to move to a period in which we're going to find all kinds of triggering events and situations. And we need that feminine divine guidance to hold us fast in being merciful to ourselves and being also merciful the way Kuan Yin was to others. And the way Kuan Yin find that mercy is by listening. By listening to herself, she began to hear other people's problem. And that happened first for her when she was focusing on her own struggles. By her focusing on the pain and the suffering and the reasons why and all that, and finding the root cause of her brokenness. And as she did this, she connected to the energy of the perpetrator, which was her dad, and she realized it was karma, past lives. And she then had to forgive herself for in the past life having been the perpetrator to her father, and for her father to try to extract his retribution in this lifetime. And when she really connected to her dad, a wave of mercy rose from her heart. And she opened herself up. Through and as she moved through this and did this for real, a whole bunch of change occurred for her. She not only was able to forgive herself for whatever happened in past lives where that negative karma got created that she had to endure in this lifetime, but she also was able to forgive her dad for a desire to try to marry her off rich at whatever cost, even though she wanted to be a nun and she didn't want to. And her father torturing her, trying to kill her, putting her in a nunnery, having people beat her and do all kinds of things to her to force her into marrying favorably as an emperor, having a favorable marriage or alliance. And because of this, she felt deeply sorry for her father. And that transformed into mercy. She forgave. And the way you remove karma, in whatever the level of karma is by asking for forgiveness. She asked herself for forgiveness for having been misguided in a past life and having erroneously believed and done things that she would not have done where she is right now, having learned the lesson. Then she forgave her dad and her father for all the attempt at killing her. There were multiple, all the suffering, all the pain, and all the thing that she forgave him for that. And through that process, the repair and the correction of the karma occurred. Because karma is not a state of victimization. Rather, karma means it actually means in Hebrew, it's tikkun, it's to repair and to correct. In Sanskrit, it means to make or to do. It's an active thing. When you realize there's a karma, you know that you need to act to correct. You don't wait around passively for the universe to come back from the back and try to stab you and hurt you. You correct it before even any of that thing happened. And so, a being like Kuan Yin, when you pray to her, she's able to help us with the correction of the karma that we have with people, particularly family, friends, and people who are close to us, we're able to correct all of this and say, I ask for your, your help. And by the way, Kuan Yin is and Mother Mary, they are members of the calming board. And so when you pray to them, they're able to come in and actually provide you with the mercy that comes from a person that can perceive your entire karma. And they can guide you into the correction and give you the clarity. I keep saying all the time, God, do not take the lesson away from me, but give me the clarity that I may understand the lesson once and for all, and I never have to repeat this again. I don't want you to take it away from me, because I want to do this myself. I want to remove my shame and my undeservedness. But give me the clarity to understand what I'm supposed to do. And the moment I have it, I will move forward to make the correction. So there is a huge role that the divine feminine has to play in this. Very recently, the mercy of God. I forgot which Sunday it was. It was a couple of weeks ago, several weeks ago, in the Catholic Church, and it's to pray to Mother Mary for mercy, and we are asking for the whomever from the divine feminine energy that you understand, that you're connected to, ask them for mercy for your situation. Ask for that divine feminine energy to come to you to help you heal, repair, and remove the karma that's blocking you from accessing the ease, the flow, and more importantly, the clarity and the guidance that you need to move forward, to find healing. Now remember, when you heal, you don't erase the past. So when you heal, particularly when you heal a karma, it's not that the past is erased. It's just that the past is no longer holding you back. So the negative effect that would balance the scale are no longer there, they're balanced out. And you can move forward from there. So it's important for us to keep that in mind as we continue to progress and deal with live in that state of perpetual hope. And I don't want you to think of God mercy or the hope and you ain't being included in God's plan as being something that's solely coming from a divine masculine perspective. There is also an equally important divine feminine part, and that divine feminine part is the part that has probably the most higher emotional, spiritual intelligence to guide us into a state of grace, a state of beatitude, and a state of virtue and higher emotion. Any questions, any comments?
Just want to share one thought that popped into my mind as you were speaking about karma not being erased and so on. But I was thinking of the Man of La Mancha, that lovely aria. He says, still stands with his last ounce of courage, scorned and covered with scars, still stands with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable. What is it? Stars? Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is through our scars that we become perfected.
Yes.
So we wouldn't want the karma to be disappeared. We want to bear that with the learning that accompanies it to strengthen us to reach that destination. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for saying this, Janice, because this is exactly what Kuan Yin did. She went into her brokenness. She went into her scars. She went into listening to all of her, all of the things that a normal human being would feel having been subjected to the thing that she got subjected to. And when she sat with them and she allowed them to unpack in her, she experienced the despair, the rage, the normal emotion that you would actually feel. And she let it all play out, and she went even deeper, and then beyond that, that's when she began to realize, wait a minute, I'm not a victim. Something happened here in the past life, and then she began to see what she didn't see before. You're absolutely right, and this is, I've said this multiple times, your vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a superpower. If you can sit with your vulnerability and you can allow it to, because one of the problem we have is that we are projecting all the time that everything should be perfect, and this is the reason why we judge others or we judge ourselves when we're not perfect, when things don't operate exactly as we see it in our head or in a so-called ideal situation. We begin to project that something is wrong. We are either defective, or the person or the situation outside need to change according to our script. But what I'm saying is that we are not perfect, we're human, and we're all struggling. And if we have enough compassion to allow everyone to be vulnerable and imperfect, then perfection will rise from there. It becomes the normal that will allow perfection to grow. So when I share with you my vulnerability, and this is the way I teach, when I share with you my struggle, when I tell you how I was struggling through this and where I am right now, where I'm overcome, and as I share this with you, that shared vulnerability allow you to relate. Because if I keep projecting all the time and talking about the perfect state of being an ascended master and enlightened, and you're struggling in silence, and you have no way of reaching this because the rift is too big for you, I'm not guiding you, I'm not helping you, I'm not mentoring you, I'm alienating you. So sharing my vulnerability with you is the superpower. Because you now can relate to what my struggle. And through that, you can begin to say to yourself, I remember this is why I love Dr. Stone, and he became my teacher. When he was struggling and he was telling us all the things that happened to him, the struggle emotionally that happened, although he was channeling and doing some extraordinary things. Okay? I witnessed him do some extraordinary things. He was doing all of this and he was struggling. I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling. And he shared it, and because he was so vulnerable and so personable, I thought to myself, my God, if he's struggling and he's still able to do this, there is hope for me. I can relate to this. There's hope for me. That's where the superpower of accepting your brokenness and your imperfection and your vulnerability, that's where the superpower exists. Because suddenly you're giving other people a leg up. You're giving them the encouragement that they need so that they can begin to say, if he can do this and he was there, I can do the same thing. Because I have to tell you, Dr. Stone left you, I mean, the man, he left the planet when he was 52. He had written over 40 books by 52. And the amount of information he channeled, it's very intimidating. But in all of his book and everywhere, it was not just about him connecting to ascended being and traveling to the, to another dimension. There was some of that, but a lot of time he was talking about his struggles. And that's what I connected to. Because all my teachers prior to that, they were all from the top down. You little millions, you need to do this X, Y, Z, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So I'm struggling and I feel alone. I don't have anybody to talk to. And when I was going to the temple, to the mystery schools, every time I tried to talk to somebody about the elder would tell me the exact same thing. Brother, you have to meditate. Well, I've been meditating, but I need something else. I need somebody to guide me through this minefield, this emotional minefield that I'm in. I need somebody to show me the way. And this is when you accept your vulnerability and you're able to do this. And this is the beauty of what Kuan Yin did. As I said, she never set out to be the bodhisattva of compassion. She never set out to be, because the name Kuan Yin was not an original name. Kuan Yin is a name title that she took when she began to hear and see the pain and the suffering of the world. That's what the name means. She who sees and hears the suffering of the world. Because when she was so deep into her own pain and her own struggle, and she began to realize what her connection to her dad, and she forgave herself for having done whatever she did in the past and subjecting herself to the suffering in this life, and then she forgave her father, and she began to feel sorry for her dad and began to project mercy toward him. As she did this, she suddenly began to hear the pain and the suffering of everyone else on earth. Through that, her listening ability occur. It's so funny. Thich Nhat Hanh was talking about Kuan Yin in one videos that I saw, and he said the only superpower, the only, not she didn't say superpower, the true gift of Kuan Yin is that she listened, unlike anybody else on the planet. How long have I been saying this to you? That the only superpower I have is that I listen well.
Mhm.
And because of this, she became Kuan. I'm not Kuan Yin by any means. I'm nowhere close. But that has always been my gift. And I'm encouraging you to connect more to your vulnerability and to share the vulnerability. And every time I'm about to share some, okay. So one of the things somebody was asking me for advice about how to do a presentation and talk and all that and so on and so forth. And I was trying to coach a client, and I remember saying to her, if you're about to do this presentation and you're not afraid initially, and you're not in a place where you feel people are going to judge me, I'm going to fail because I'm going to be so open and so vulnerable. I'm sharing something that's so intimate with me that people are going to reject me. If you're not feeling it, you're doing it wrong. For the frequency of what's going on in the world right now, you're not being authentic if you're not feeling this. And this is true of arts, of music, of anything else that you do. The moment you begin to feel that there's an emotional vulnerability in you, that you're afraid that the part or your interpretation of the piece of music or your art that you're painting, that people will not be able to understand it because you're revealing something that's so intimate, or you're writing, or whatever it is that you're presenting, or the word that you're going to say, the presentation, it's going to be so intimate and you're afraid people are going to judge you. The moment you're in that space, you captured the authenticity frequency. go for it. Because you're gonna be, people are gonna hear you and you're gonna be relatable. Did I answer your question, Janice?
Oh, everything is resonating so strongly, and thank you for it.
You know, as a performer, I'm sure when you're about to go, you know, you hear the applause and you're about to go in, there's a part of you that's scared.
I don't know any performer that isn't.
Yes, yes, yes. Because you think, you know, I remember saying this when I was an architect, that when I get a new project, the first week when I get the project, it's the most terrifying thing in the world for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because although I have had success in the past of designing that or the other, I am always afraid that I am a fraud, that I will not be able to repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that imposter syndrome. And so for the first week, I have all my tools laid out. I have everything laid out. I have my sketch pad and everything else. I sharpen the pencil. And what I do? I clean the office. I do everything else. I do a lot of research. I look at precedent. I do everything else, and it takes a long time to exhaust that part of me out before I can begin to start sketching and start drawing something to create.
Mm.
Because initially that imposter syndrome is there. That vulnerability is there. Particularly when you're in the arts where you know X doesn't equal -5.
But you have to be able to control that, right? I mean,
Yes, yes, because yes, totally. And I know, for example, when I'm designing for, you know, I know how to control it. I know what I have to do to exhaust it out. Right?
cleanest office of everybody.
So that again?
I say you have the cleanest office of anybody.
Exactly. Exactly. And but the moment, I remember being doing several competition in offices, and I remember it's a whole team. The whole office are doing this together, and we're designing. I'm doing the facades. This one is doing the plan, and the buildings are so big, and you're doing it. There are multiple firms that are hired to do this or that are competing to win the first prize. And I remember and we work when we call it charrette, and when architects are doing this, we work long hours. We're there until late, sometimes 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then the next morning we show up at 8 o'clock and we start again, and we do this until the project is complete. We crank it out, okay? And it's usually a short time, and then you have to do all of this big, anyway. But we all have our own expertise. So once we agree on the design, what we're doing, and we collectively agree and we sketch it out, my part, I know what I'm doing. I deal with the massing of the building, what the building look like, the facade and all this. I know what I'm doing. And when you do it right, your team members give you reinforcement. I remember one time, they all left, and I sketched, I did what I had to do. And the next morning, when they came in, they were, "Oh my God, Pierre, this looks beautiful." And I knew, okay, I said, okay, I hit the ball out of the park. Okay, that's good. That's good. My part is good. But again, there are lots of details and again, time crunch coming in, because when you're submitting something like this, now there's a lot of change that have occurred in the business because everything is electronic. At the time, you would submit a book. You have to assemble a book that has all the plans, all of the sections, all of the elevations, and everything else with the program, with words, what you're describing, what you're trying to do, blah, 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 blah. So we have to pick up the font, the graphic, and it's a whole production. You're producing a book. So aside from the design, you have now to package it, right? And so we, as a team, we all have our own expertise, and but there is a kind of management of that fear that you have to do over time, because initially the first few times it's terrifying, and very intimidating. But after a while, because again, even with emotional vulnerability about anything, if you know it's there and it's the process through which you're going to become authentic, you're not afraid of it anymore. Kuan Yin was no longer afraid of going into her core, into her brokenness, because every time she went in, she got something that was so big out of it, she understood herself in a way that she never did before. And therefore, a huge chunk of false belief fell out. And she got closer to light, to true light. So every time we go to a moment of that kind of vulnerability, and that we move over it, we sit with it, and we allow it to, because it's all these vulnerable moments or teaching moments. And if you sit with it and you realize, no, I don't have to be afraid of this. The gift is there. I can sing. I can design. And you prove it to yourself again. I can create. I can interpret this piece. Or emotionally, I've discovered something about myself. I am afraid this is because this happened to me, and now I don't have to do this because I have a different way of, and what the question you have to ask emotionally when you're doing this thing, and I've shared this with you before, is to keep asking yourself as you're making these queries about these emotional vulnerable moments, what is the emotional need I had that's causing me to be that vulnerable? And if you can answer that, it will solve the problem. You will see maybe the crooked way, the kind of tilted way in which you're trying to fulfill it. And then you can say, now, Spirit God, give me an ascended and aligned way to achieve the same end, to fulfill that emotional need. And that's the new access you're going to create. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll do a closing meditation on the back end. 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as we inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into our lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let our soul and awareness drop in the middle of our chest. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Let your mind and your heart sync with each other. And notice what you noticed. Listen. Listen as if the more than 50 trillion cells in your body had ears. Become aware of any resistance, vulnerability, or struggles. That may exist in you. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. What energetic dynamic is this vulnerability showing me? Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. What am I feeling? Is it one feeling? Or a combination of multiple feelings? What is the first feeling? The second feeling? Or are there any other feelings? What is the emotional need that this vulnerability and feeling trying to fulfill. Show me an aligned manner to fulfill that need. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. Beloved Mother of God, Divine Mother, illumine my heart with your clarity, mercy, and compassion. Guide my path with your protection, your love, and your acceptance. Lead me into an understanding of the work, the shift, and encouragement and support that I need to make the changes in my life that will guide me in safe passage during the transit. Have mercy on us. Allow my heart, my emotions, and my mind to be receptive to your voice, your actions, your inspiration, that I may grow and evolve into a perfect child, being, son and daughter. Let your infinite mercy, beauty, acceptance, and compassion heal and repair the fabric of my consciousness, my body, and every DNA in my being. And may I radiate your mercy, your acceptance, your love, your forgiveness, and your compassion unto the world. May I observe from your perception of mercy and love May I radiate from my heart the peace, the serenity, and the liberation that you have grounded in me. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
Whew. Oh, Pierre, you knew just what I needed tonight. That was just hit the mark. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful, Janice. I'm so happy to hear that.
Mhm.
That's great. That's great. I want to thank all of you for listening to me tonight. If you're on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to us on Patreon, thank you for the support. Deep love, everyone. Keep up the incredible work, and I'll talk to you next week. Love you.
Love you all. Good night, everyone.